that also leads me to the next question I'd like to ask you, Arif, about the report itself, which is an annual report. But the situation may change quickly all the time. So one question is, are we identifying the problem with the right frequency, but also from what Baz was saying, not just looking at, okay, is there a food crisis situation, but also how vulnerable are existing situations to detect the risk of a food crisis from breaking out. So having said that, so what is your perspective on the early warning systems we have? Are they adequate? And what more would need to be done to get to that early warning, early action systems that can not just detect the crisis, but also its causes and give an entry point to what needs to be done?
Thanks, Rob. I think we have come a long way. I started with the World Food Program about 15 years ago, and my first crisis was Darfur crisis. And you know, a perfectly good answer for certain things was, it's a no-go area, so we don't know. Yeah. And that was acceptable answer for international community. And we worked on ad hoc levels of information when it came in or out. You worked on that. Today, I don't think there are any no-go areas left, because you may not be able to step in, but you can always get information from those places out. That's thanks to technology. Just to give you examples of that, in WFP through WAM, we are using mobile methods where we have a time series, monthly time series of early warning information or food security information from places like Yemen, Syria, South Sudan, which 5 years ago was almost impossible. Right? We are using satellite imagery to see how camps are expanding, shrinking in terms of refugees. It was impossible to do that only a few years ago. We can even track, you know, when an earthquake happens or when a hurricane happens and people leave, whether it is Kathmandu Valley or it's Hurricane Matthew in Haiti. When they left, where did they go? Through mobile technologies. We can also find out when they're starting to come back. And all this to say that our ability to see is much more today than it has been before. This is not to what bothers me, or what is really difficult in our job right now is that we have 79 million people in conflict-affected areas. So even if you can see it, what do you do about it? That's really the tough question. On the data side, what we find is that because it is conflict, it doesn't make sense to ask a lot of questions because things are changing so quickly. But what you must do is ask often. So ask less, but ask often. And if we can do that, we have information which we can then feed to our operations, so our operations can adjust as necessary. That's one thing. The second thing for me on the data side, Rob, as you mentioned, quality can always be better. It's not one glove fits all. It's not that we have best data from every place. It depends on the environment in which we are collecting data. So if you have 2 hours in a place, you're going to do one thing. If you have 2 days in a place, you're going to do something totally different. And we have to keep that in mind and be transparent in what we are saying. You know. But bottom line is we have to have data, and we have more data today to affect better decision making. The other thing which is very relevant to that is that more and more it's about real-time and near real-time data. The days of doing 6 weeks of food security monitoring and trying to get a report out are almost over. If you cannot go in and find something within 3 or 4, maybe a couple of weeks, the validity of that information is gone. So you have to worry about it. On the IPC thing, what we think is, I think we have come a long, long way. I think it's between cadre harmonese, between IPC. We are giving the responsibility to regions. But there is an element of capacity development there, which we need to focus. There is an element of improving the timing of those analyses. Because remember, I mean, food security is not a static concept, right? So what we see today is not necessarily the case tomorrow. So when you gather all this and collate all this and you present it, this is about yesterday. It is not about tomorrow. Maybe a little bit about today, but it's not about tomorrow. How do we go to tomorrow? This is where we are trying to focus and take this report through the global platform and all of that. I'm sure Dominic will talk about that. And the other thing which is important is that it has to be a global public good. If we are doing all of this work, then it shouldn't just be used by WFP and FAO and a few others. It has to be a global public good, which is useful both for humanitarian purposes, but also for development purposes. And when European Union ECHO and DevCo came together to provide funding for this, I think that was bringing this, working from this same page concept out. And my final, I have a couple of final points. One is about if we can see more, can we do more? Because what we are seeing, and I want to just give you a little bit of example here. In 2016, when you look at the humanitarian financial data, $27 billion came in, fourth consecutive increase. Private sector, everybody included, not just OECD or DAC. 54% of that went to 4 countries, just 4 countries. The remaining went to 44 countries. So in those 44 remaining countries, the needs were met anywhere from 5% to 95%. But now you look at your IPC, you're saying, hey, phase 3 and above, is somebody in bad state? Well, they're in bad state in those 4 countries, but also another, 47 countries. What about that? And when we look we live in a globalized world, it's not that people don't see what we do in one place versus another. So what about the inequality in assistance? And we are seeing more of that because people will ask you. I can tell you, I personally have experienced this, where I was standing in DRC, in Central African Republic, and a person came to me and said, you guys give packages of food to Syrians, and we have to scoop our food. What is your answer to that? You don't have an answer. So for me, as we are getting this data, as we are seeing more things very, very openly, as we are knowing people more, our responsibilities as humanitarians, as development partners and donors are also increasing because the onus is on us. What do we do with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Arif. Very clear, so we know more, we can see more, but yet we still have questions what to do with it.